Go ahead and walk into your nearest Tractor Supply right now. I dare you. Head straight to the back aisles, the ones that smell like feed dust and metal, and start looking for the stuff you used to grab without thinking twice. Count the holes. Count the new price tags sitting where old products used to be. Count how many things just aren't there anymore. I'm not talking about seasonal rotation. I'm not talking about sold out. I'm talking about erased, wiped from the system. No announcement, no farewell sale, no little yellow clearance sticker giving you a heads up. Just gone. Like the product never sat on that shelf in the first place. And here's what should make your stomach drop a little. Every single thing that disappeared was the kind of product that people who actually prepare for hard times have been quietly buying for years. Not the tactical junk. Not the zombie apocalypse fantasy gear. The real stuff. The boring, ugly, heavy, built to outlast you stuff that homesteaders, veterans, and anyone with half a brain about self-reliance has been stacking in their garage since before prepping was a hashtag. Weeks of digging through regional inventory systems, comparing what's on the website versus what's actually on the floor, tracking what vanished and when. And I found 12 specific products that have been axed over roughly the last year and a half to 2 years. 12 items. Not because they stopped working. Not because customers complained. They got cut because they did their job too well and only needed to be bought once. Let me say that differently so it really lands. The products that lasted forever are the products that got killed first. Because a tool you buy once and never replace is a tool that makes the company $0 after that first sale. A flimsy thing that breaks, wears out, or needs refills? That's a subscription disguised as a product. That's the business model winning over the customer. And there's one item on this list, I'll tell you right now, that didn't get pulled because it was unprofitable. It got pulled because it was flying off the shelves so fast, and the people buying it were so obviously not the intended customer base, that somebody upstairs got uncomfortable and buried it. That one's coming. But you need to hear the first several to understand why that last one matters so much. Let's get into it. 1. The cast iron hand crank grain mill start, where nobody looks. Back corner. Farm supply crossover aisle. The section that looks like it hasn't been updated since 1987. That's where the cast iron hand crank grain mill used to live. Heavy, ugly, bolts to your table or countertop with a clamp. You dump wheat berries, dried corn, coffee beans, dried legumes into the hopper, and you crank. Out comes flour. Out comes cracked grain for porridge. Out comes ground coffee. No plug. No battery. No motor to burn out. Just your arm doing the work. Now let me tell you why losing this one is a gut punch for anyone who stores bulk grain. You can seal hard red winter wheat in a 5-gallon bucket with an oxygen absorber, and that grain will sit there perfectly fine for 25-30 years. It does not go bad. That's not an exaggeration. That's documented food science. But here's the catch nobody thinks about until it's too late. Whole wheat berries are not food you can just eat. You can't chew your way through a handful of raw wheat and get meaningful nutrition from it. Your body can't break it down. The mill is the thing that converts stored grain from a theoretical food supply into an actual meal on the table. Without it, your 30-year bucket of wheat is 30 years of decorative gravel. The version they carried was the real deal. 4 to 5 pounds of cast iron. Solid burr plates you could adjust from a rough crack all the way down to fine baking flour. 35, maybe 45 bucks depending on when you bought it. What's sitting in its place now? A countertop electric grinder with a plastic housing. Plug it in. Which is exactly the point of failure you were trying to eliminate from your entire setup. The whole reason you store raw grain instead of pre-ground flour is to not need the electrical grid. And they just handed you a grain processor that becomes a doorstop the second the power cuts out. Look at Argentina in 2001. The peso collapsed basically overnight. Store shelves emptied in days. The families that ate through the worst of it weren't the ones with the biggest pantry of canned goods. Cans run out. The families that made it were the ones who could take raw bulk staples and turn them into meals indefinitely. The mill was the tool that made that possible. And now, it's floor stock only, if your store even has one left. When that shelf is empty, it's empty for good. 2. The galvanized pitcher pump plumbing and livestock section. The old hand pump. Long handle, cast body, galvanized coating. The thing you've seen bolted to a wellhead in every old farmstead photo ever taken. People look at it and think it's a decoration. It is absolutely not a decoration. It is a fully operational, zero electricity water extraction device that pulls from a shallow well or cistern using nothing but a leather seal inside the cylinder and your hand on the lever. Think about what happens to your water supply when the power goes out. Right now, this second, every drop of water that comes out of your faucet depends on pressure. That pressure comes from either a municipal pump station or your own well pump. Both of those run on electricity. The moment the grid dies, every tap in your house is a dead pipe. You could be sitting on top of a perfectly good well with clean water 15 feet below your yard, and you cannot reach a single drop of it without power. The pitcher pump doesn't care about any of that. It's a mechanical lever, gravity and suction. It pulls water in a blackout, in a storm, in the middle of the night with zero infrastructure supporting it. These ran $40 to $60. Cast body, galvanized so they don't rust out in a season, and completely rebuildable. The leather plunger seal wears out eventually. You buy a $5 replacement kit, and the pump runs another couple decades. The thing they're pushing instead? An electric transfer pump. Plug it in. Same pattern. Every hand-powered item getting swapped for a grid-dependent replacement. Texas, February 2021. The entire state's power grid collapsed in a deep freeze. Pipes froze, burst, and even where the plumbing survived, there was no pressure because the pumps were down. People on private wells with electric-only pumps were completely stranded. The few rural households that had kept a manual pump on the wellhead were drawing clean water by hand while their neighbors were out in the yard melting snow in pots. That's the difference this pump makes. And it went early in the discontinuation wave. If you find a dusty one on a back shelf somewhere, do not leave without it. If you're getting something out of this so far, drop a like right now, hit subscribe, leave a comment telling me which of these your local store still has. Seriously, it takes 2 seconds and it helps more than you think. Let's keep going. 3. The portable kerosene convection heater, seasonal heating aisle. This is the one that genuinely makes people angry when they find out it's been pulled. The round tower-style kerosene heater throws heat in a full 360-degree circle, runs on standard kerosene, no electricity, no fan, no thermostat wire. Pour fuel in the tank, light the wick, and the thing will hold an entire room at a livable temperature on a couple gallons a day. Here's the math that nobody wants to do until they're sitting in a freezing house at 2 in the morning. Hypothermia does not require a blizzard. People die inside their own homes every single winter at temperatures that sound completely unremarkable. A house that drops into the 30s or low 40s indoors, over 48 hours of no heat, is enough to kill elderly people, small children, and anyone whose health is already compromised. That's not a wilderness survival scenario. That's a Tuesday in February when the furnace quits and the power company says 3 to 5 days. The kerosene heater is the most efficient way to keep a room survivable when the furnace is dead and the grid is dark. The models they stocked pushed out somewhere around 22,000 BTU. That's enough to hold 1,000 square feet at a comfortable temperature. Running cost? $1.5 gallons, maybe 2 gallons of kerosene per day. At a few dollars a gallon, you're spending pocket change per hour to not freeze to death. It got cut because of tightening indoor combustion regulations, corporate liability anxiety, and the steady push toward electric space heaters. Electric space heaters. The ones that produce zero heat in the exact emergency scenario that made you buy a backup heater in the first place. That's not a replacement. That's a contradiction. The flat-top models doubled as a cooking surface too. Boil water, heat a can of soup, make coffee. In a dark house with no power, the burner glow even threw enough light to see by. One device doing the work of a heater, a stove, and a lamp. And they killed it. If you find end-of-season clearance stock, buy it, and buy the kerosene to match. You cannot run a kerosene heater without kerosene, and fuel is the thing people forget until they're trying to find it in the middle of the crisis. Fordone, the gravity-fed water filter. Now let's talk about the thing that keeps you alive longer than almost anything else on this list. 2-chamber stainless steel canister. Ceramic or carbon block filter elements inside. You pour unfiltered water into the top chamber. Gravity does the work. Clean, drinkable water collects in the bottom. No pump, no plumbing connection, no power, no moving parts. Water is the entire game. Everything else on this list is important. Water is non-negotiable. You can stretch food for weeks. You can bundle up against the cold. You can sit in the dark. But without clean water, your organs start shutting down inside of 72 hours. And drinking contaminated water is worse than drinking nothing, because dysentery and waterborne parasites will take you out faster than dehydration will. A gravity filter takes pond water, rain barrel collection, river water, questionable municipal tap water during a boil advisory, and turns it into safe drinking water, day after day, for years. A single set of filter elements handles thousands of gallons before you need to swap them. The upfront cost was in the $250 to $300 range. Sounds like a lot until you divide that by the number of gallons it produces and realize you're paying a fraction of a penny per gallon of clean water across years of use. That's cheaper than bottled water by an almost absurd margin. What's replacing it? Single-use squeeze filters and little pitcher filters rated for a few dozen gallons. Disposable, consumable, repeat purchase. The business logic is right there staring at you, and so is the capability you're losing. Look at Katrina. Look at Flint. Look at every hurricane that knocks out municipal water treatment for a week or more. The deaths that happen after the storm aren't from the storm itself. They come days later, from people drinking water they shouldn't have, because the bottled supply ran out and nobody had a way to make more. A gravity filter is a water treatment plant that fits on your kitchen counter and never asks for a power cord. That's what just walked off the shelf. Buy spare filter elements even if you already own the housing. The elements are the part going extinct fastest. 5 Duesh. The heavy galvanized steel fuel can. The old jerry can design. Thick-walled steel, screw-down cap with a proper gasket seal. Built to a military specification that predates most of the people reading this. Nobody thinks about fuel storage until there's no fuel to buy. And here's the thing about gas stations that most people have never considered. The fuel is underground in tanks. The pumps that bring it up to the nozzle run on electricity. When the power goes out across a region, every gas station in your area has fuel locked underground that nobody can access. Whatever fuel you already have stored at home is all the fuel that exists in your world. And plastic fuel cans are a terrible way to store it. They breathe, they let vapor pass through the walls. They degrade in UV light. They get brittle in cold and soft in heat. They let the fuel go stale faster. The galvanized steel conceals airtight, blocks light, doesn't crack in a freeze or warp in summer. And with a fuel stabilizer added, it'll keep gasoline usable for a year or longer. $20, $30 depending on size. The replacement taking its shelf space is cheaper plastic with those mandated safety spouts that barely function. Thinner walls, shorter lifespan. You'll buy 3 of them in the time one steel can lasts. Colonial Pipeline shutdown, 2021. Gas stations across the entire southeastern United States ran dry in days. Hurricane evacuations where the pumps emptied before half the population got on the road. Every single fuel crisis in living memory comes down to the same split. People who stored fuel in advance drove out calmly. People who didn't sat in lines that stretched for miles at pumps that went empty in front of them. Stored fuel is mobility, and the can is what keeps the fuel viable long enough to matter. Quick pause. If this is hitting different for you, if you're already mentally walking through your nearest store figuring out what's still there, do me a favor. Like this video. Drop a comment. Tell me which items you've already noticed missing. And subscribe if you haven't, because the next one builds directly on everything I'm laying out here. Alright, back to the list. 6. Water purification tablets. Small enough to miss entirely. Important enough that losing access should genuinely concern you. Iodine or chlorine dioxide tablets. Tiny bottle. Camping section. Sometimes the livestock health crossover aisle. A few dollars per bottle, and each bottle treats a startling volume of water. Dozens of liters. Think of these as your backup's backup. The gravity filter handles your home base water supply, but tablets fit in a coat pocket, weigh basically nothing, and purify water anywhere you happen to be. On the road, in the field, in a go bag, in the exact scenario where you can't haul a stainless steel canister around with you. Drop a tablet in a bottle of questionable water, wait the prescribed time, drink. No fire needed, no pumping, no power, no equipment. They're getting squeezed off shelves partly because of supply chain issues on the iodine side, and partly because the same disposable filter push that killed the gravity system is eating into tablet sales too. And here's the part the average customer doesn't know. Certain iodine preparations have a legitimate secondary use as a wound antiseptic when properly diluted and applied. That dual-purpose utility is exactly the kind of efficiency that experienced preppers value, and exactly the kind of thing retailers don't care about because it doesn't generate additional sales. Haiti, Pakistan. Every tsunami response zone. The first supply that gets airlifted in isn't food or tents, it's water purification. Because waterborne illness is what starts killing people in the second week after a disaster, after the immediate danger passes and the contaminated water has time to do its damage. Tablets are that protection in a package the size of a pill bottle. When you see them in stock, buy a year's supply, not one bottle, a year's worth. The availability window is shrinking, and it's not predictable. 7. The hand crank and solar emergency radio. The unit with the fold-out solar panel, the hand crank on the back, AM/FM plus weather bands, a USB charging port, and a built-in LED flashlight. Here's the capability nobody values until it's the only thing they have left: information. In a real extended power outage, the most dangerous thing you face isn't the cold, the dark, or the hunger. It's not knowing what's happening, not knowing if the evacuation order changed, not knowing where the water distribution point got set up, not knowing if a second storm is incoming. Your phone is dead, the cell towers might be down, your internet is obviously gone. You are completely, totally cut off from every source of information you normally rely on. A crank radio pulls in emergency broadcast signals with no grid, no cell service, no batteries required. You turn the handle, it talks. That is your single remaining connection to the outside world when every digital line has been severed. The models they carried did everything. Solar trickle charge for keeping the battery topped up passively, hand crank for immediate power generation, weather band alerts, and a USB output so you could put just enough charge into a dead phone to fire off one text message or make one call. 25 to 40 bucks. The quiet replacement happening now is battery-only units and Bluetooth speakers that happen to have a weather band tacked on as an afterthought. The self-powering versions, the ones that need nothing from you except a working arm and some daylight, are the ones vanishing. Every hurricane after-action report, every wildfire evacuation review says the same thing. The people who stayed informed made better calls and got out earlier and safer. The people who went dark, no power, no news, just guessing, waited too long or moved in the wrong direction. A self-powered radio is information that cannot be switched off by anyone or anything. And the Crank Plus solar models are the endangered species here. Battery versions will stay on the shelf forever because you have to keep buying batteries. The ones that generate their own power won't be restocked. 8. The deep well bucket and rope kit. The skinny galvanized cylinder on a long rope with a foot valve at the bottom. It drops down a well casing, fills with water at the bottom, and you haul it up by hand. This is the companion piece to the pitcher pump from earlier, and here's why you want both. The pitcher pump works on shallow wells. 20, maybe 25 feet of lift, maximum. That's a physics limitation, not a design flaw. Suction can only lift water so far before the column breaks. But a lot of real residential wells are deeper than that. 40 feet, 60 feet, 100 feet or more. No hand pump on Earth can lift water from 100 feet down by suction. It's physically impossible. The well bucket doesn't use suction at all. It physically drops down into the water, fills, and you pull the weight straight up. It works at any depth your rope can reach. For anyone on a deep well, this narrow galvanized tube is literally the only way to access your own water without electricity. There is no non-electric alternative, period. The bucket itself ran 20 to 30 bucks plus whatever rope you needed. Simple, nearly indestructible, galvanized against corrosion. It's disappearing not because it failed at anything, but because it's slow, it's unglamorous, and it competes with the electric submersible pumps. The store makes a lot more money selling the same electric pumps that become expensive metal tubes at the bottom of your well the second the power goes out. For most of recorded human history, this was how people got water. A bucket on a rope. It predates the mechanical pump by thousands of years, and it has never once required a power plant to operate. Every region that's experienced an extended grid failure rediscovers the same reality. The 10,000-year-old technology works during the blackout. The 30-year-old technology that needs a wall outlet is the first thing that fails. If you're on a deep well, this is the single most important item on this entire list. Chase it down aggressively. All right, real quick. We're getting close to the big one, and I need you locked in. If you've made it this far, you're clearly not here for entertainment. You're here because this stuff actually matters to you. So hit that subscribe button right now. Turn on notifications. Drop a like. Tell me in the comments which of these 8 your store still carries, and which ones are already gone. I read every single comment. Now let's get to the ones I've been holding back. 9. The non-electric oil lamp and wick supply. Here's one that slipped away so quietly, most people don't even realize it happened. The classic glass chimney oil lamp and the cotton wick refill packs that used to sit right next to them. Not a candle. Not a battery lantern. An actual kerosene or lamp oil burning lamp with a wick adjustment wheel, a glass chimney for draft control, and a fuel capacity that would give you 8 to 12 hours of steady light on a single fill. Light seems trivial until you don't have it. And I don't mean inconvenient, I mean dangerous. A fully dark house at night during a multi-day outage is a fall hazard, a psychological stressor, and a security vulnerability all at once. You can't see who's at the door. You can't see your kid trip on the stairs. You can't read medicine labels, check on elderly family members, or do basically any task that requires your eyes after sundown. An oil lamp burns for hours on pennies worth of fuel, throws enough warm light to work by, and the fuel is the same kerosene you're already storing for the heater from item 3. One fuel source, two critical systems. That's the kind of overlap that makes a preparedness setup actually efficient instead of just expensive. The lamps got nudged out in favor of battery-powered LED lanterns, which are fine until the batteries die, and then they're plastic paperweights. The oil lamp runs as long as you have fuel and wick material, and cotton wicks can be improvised from scrap fabric in a true pinch. The LED lantern cannot be improvised from anything. Buy the lamp, buy extra wicks, buy extra chimneys because glass breaks, and store the lamp oil with your kerosene supply. 10. The manual post driver heavy steel tube with handles welded on. You slide it over a T-post, lift it, and slam it down. The post goes into the ground. No gas-powered driver, no tractor attachment, no hydraulics. This doesn't sound like a survival item until you think about what fencing actually means in a long-term disruption. Fencing is security. Fencing is livestock containment. Fencing is garden protection from deer and other animals that will strip your food production overnight if you can't keep them out. After any major regional disaster, the people who can put up a fence, a pen, a barrier, or a perimeter without needing powered equipment are the people who can establish and hold a functional homestead footprint. The people who can't are dependent on hoping someone with a tractor shows up. A manual post driver lets one person put up a field fence line alone. No fuel, no second person required, no equipment rental, just your own 2 arms and a willingness to sweat. They're getting replaced by recommendations toward pneumatic and gas-powered drivers that cost 10 times as much and require, once again, fuel and electricity to operate. The manual driver cost around $30 to $40 and would outlast you. It's the same story as every other item on this list. The version that works without the grid is the version that's being quietly pushed aside. 11 Nysen, the cast iron Dutch oven. Camp style with legs, not the enameled kitchen one your spouse uses for pot roast. The raw cast iron, flat-lidded, 3-legged camp Dutch oven designed to sit directly in a bed of coals or over an open fire. The flanged lid holds coals on top, so heat comes from both directions. You can bake bread in it, you can make stew, roast meat, cook beans, fry, braise, literally anything. Over a campfire, over charcoal, over a wood stove, over nothing but a hole in the ground filled with hot coals. This is the cooking vessel that works when your kitchen doesn't. When the stove is electric and the power's out, when the gas line is shut off, when you're cooking outside because that's where the fire is, the Camp Dutch oven does everything a full kitchen does with nothing but fire as the fuel source. The good ones, the heavy American-made or quality import versions with proper casting and pre-seasoning, have been quietly thinned from inventory and replaced by lighter, thinner, cheaper versions that warp over a real fire and crack under thermal shock. The difference between a $40 camp oven that lasts 3 generations and a $15 one that cracks the second time you use it over coals is not visible on the shelf. But it's very visible the night you need it to work, and it doesn't. If you can find the heavy version, the one that weighs as much as a small child and feels like it was made to survive a war, buy it. Season it properly. It will feed your family over an open fire for the rest of your natural life, and probably your grandchildren's too. 12-9's the big one. Bulk agricultural salt. Here it is, the one I've been sitting on since the opening. The item that wasn't killed because it wasn't selling. It was buried because it was selling too well to the wrong kind of buyer. Bulk agricultural mineral and salt supply. 50-pound livestock salt blocks. Loose mineral mix by the bag. Canning and preservation salt in multi-pound quantities. Plain, boring, agricultural-grade sodium chloride sold at a per-pound price so low it makes the little canisters at the grocery store look like a luxury markup. And here's where you need to shift your entire frame of reference to understand why this is the most important item on this list. Most people see a salt block and think cattle. That's it. Salt for cows. But salt is arguably the single most important survival commodity in the entire history of human civilization. The word salary literally derives from the Latin word for salt because Roman soldiers were paid with it. It was that valuable. It was currency. Salt is not a seasoning. Salt is preservation technology. Without refrigeration, salt is how you keep meat from spoiling. It's how you cure, brine, smoke, and store animal protein for months without a single watt of electricity. Take away the refrigerator and salt is the only thing standing between your food supply and rot. It's electrolyte replacement when someone's dehydrated in the heat. It's a wound cleaning solution. It's a critical input for hide tanning and leather work. It's what makes stored rations actually taste like food instead of punishment. And when the grocery store shelves go bare in a real crisis, salt becomes one of the most sought-after barter commodities in existence. Now here's why this one got quietly pushed out the back door. When you can buy 50 pounds of pure sodium chloride for the price of 2 fancy coffees, at a per-pound cost that's a tiny fraction of what grocery store iodized salt runs, the people loading up aren't ranchers with a herd of cattle. They're preppers buying preservation capacity by the 100 pounds. Bulk agricultural salt became one of the most absurdly efficient cost-to-capability purchases in the entire store. And when a low-margin agricultural staple starts getting cleared out by the pallet load by customers who clearly aren't running livestock operations, that draws attention. That's a product being used outside its intended market in a way that makes someone in the corporate chain uncomfortable. And the response isn't a press release. The response is quiet delisting, reformulation into smaller branded packages at higher per-unit prices, or simply not reordering the pallet-priced bulk version. The cheap bulk version is the one disappearing. Branded retail salt in 2-pound canisters will always be on the shelf. The 50-pound block for the price of a fast food meal, that's the one slipping away. During the siege of Sarajevo, salt was among the most desperately traded commodities in the entire city. Not because people wanted to season their dinner, because they understood what modern, comfortable society has completely forgotten. The ability to preserve food is the ability to survive the period when no new food arrives. Stockpiling cans gives you a countdown timer. The ability to preserve gives you an ongoing strategy. The people who understood salt ate through the winter. The people who didn't were at the mercy of whatever aid showed up, if it showed up. Every besieged city in history, every long winter before industrial agriculture, every era before refrigeration, salt was the line between survival and starvation. And right now, the most cost-effective way to buy it in bulk is walking out the back door of your local farm store while nobody's paying attention. Grab it while you can. So let's count what disappeared at a grain mill. The bridge between stored grain and actual food on the table. A hand pump and a well bucket. Your water supply with the power off, at any depth. A kerosene heater. Survivable warmth when the furnace is dead and the grid is dark. A gravity filter and purification tablets. Clean drinking water. Day after day, anywhere. A steel fuel can, the master resource, stored properly and kept viable. An oil lamp, light that doesn't need batteries or a plug. A self-powered radio, your single remaining link to the outside world. A manual post driver, infrastructure you can build with nothing but your arms. A camp Dutch oven, a full kitchen that runs on fire and nothing else. And bulk salt, the oldest preservation technology on Earth, and the dividing line between food that lasts and food that rots. Every single one of these shares the same DNA. Cheap, durable, single-purpose, or elegantly multi-purpose. Completely independent of the electrical grid. And every single one is being replaced by something that plugs in, wears out faster, or needs to be repurchased regularly. Something that sells you the same problem over and over again instead of solving it one time. That is not a coincidence. That is a business model choosing recurring revenue over customer independence. The tools that make you self-reliant are the tools that quietly disappear, because a self-reliant customer is a customer who stops coming back. Last call. If this video gave you even one thing you didn't know before, smash that like button, subscribe, turn on the bell, and drop a comment telling me which item you're going after first, because I genuinely want to know. Share this with someone who needs to hear it before the last units sell to somebody else. Most people who watch this felt a little jolt of recognition and will proceed to do absolutely nothing about it. The gap on the shelf will fill in with something inferior. The last units will sell to someone who moved faster. And the next time the power goes out in their town for more than a day, they'll be standing in line in the cold, in the dark, trying to buy bottled water at 4 times the normal price, learning the hard way what the word discontinued actually cost them. You're not most people. You watch the whole thing. You're already running your local store layout in your head. You're picturing which aisle, which back shelf, which dusty corner, might still have one of these 12 items sitting there right now, today, before the last one gets grabbed by someone else. So go. This week. Not next month. Not eventually. This week. And while you're figuring out which one to hunt down first, make sure you're subscribed, because the next video ties all 12 of these together. I'm going to walk you through the exact order to buy them in, how they stack into a single integrated self-reliant system, and the specific combination of 3 items from this list that handles 90% of the job for under $100. That's the build that turns a random cart full of farm store junk into a setup that actually holds when everything else falls apart. I'll see you in that one. Go get your list together.